Hi, I'm Will. Okay, maybe I'm not Will. But this is What's Leaving and What's Left, a podcast about divorce. Why what's leaving and what's left? Well, maybe you're leaving, maybe you're left. Which is to say, this is a show about divorce. It isn't a how-to guide. It definitely isn't a substitute for legal representation or therapy. Although we will plead with you, please look into both those things. It might be good to mention here that there's nothing here to be construed as legal or medical advice. What's leaving and what's left is real divorce stories of real people. The idea came to me when I realized how many men I knew were going through divorces that would never look for help as they deal with divorce, or that when help was offered, they would never accept it. And yet when they found themselves in a divorce, they wanted to talk to me about it. Interestingly enough, but maybe not surprisingly, their stories, and maybe yours, have a lot in common with each other. And while I can't claim to be an expert on divorce, relationships, psychology, anything, I think finding familiarity and common ground in some of these stories might be soothing and somewhat therapeutic. And maybe, at the very least, we can provide a parasocial group for people having trouble finding, or people having trouble even beginning to look for, help. Welcome back. It's been a good month. No shows. It's been quiet over here at What's Leaving and What's Left. I am William. We're back in the studio, and we have a very special episode today because we have our first not anonymous guest. If you didn't know that, these previous guests were not the actual names, and that was not their voices. Welcome to the show. But today we are joined by Jessica Pederson of JWB Family Law, a real-life family law attorney. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
But you have some other acronyms at the end of your title, right?
I do. I am a certified family law specialist.
Ooh, okay. Brush the dirt off your shoulders. Don't need to brag too much. So how long have you been practicing?
I got barred in 2015.
That sounds bad, but that means you passed the bar.
That does mean I passed the bar.
Yeah.
I got sworn in. And so I have been practicing as an attorney for 9 years. I did family law all through law school, so I have been involved in family law in some way, I think, since 2012.
So what drew, did you have a rough family life? What made you want to do family law? Because I don't like it.
Most people don't like it. It was kind of a fluke. I went to law school and I did not know any attorneys. I had never been in an attorney's office. And so I didn't really have any idea what I was going to do. I just knew that I did not want to be a journalist. And so I went into law school with a pretty open mind, and I tried all kinds of things in my first year particularly. And then I think at the beginning of my second semester of law school, I sat in on a panel about adoption. Mm-hmm. And that was the first thing that really piqued my interest. It was interesting, and it was way more interesting than contracts or anything that I had been a part of so far at that point in time. And so I joined the Family Law Society, and I got my first internship was with the Department of Child Support Services. And
that sounds depressing.
Mm-hmm. I spent 9 months learning about nothing but child support.
Also, you're not dissuading me from this opinion. Cool, continue.
And I was pretty impressed by the fact that I had spent 9 months learning about one piece of one area of the law. And so after that internship ended, I started working for a family law attorney here in San Diego. And I enjoyed it. It was fast paced. You're in court a lot. Other than probably public defenders, we are in court more than any other area of the law.
So you in criminal defense.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it felt really good to work with real people. I was working with people, and the work that I was doing was making a difference in their lives every day. And that felt a lot better than working for a big corporation or someone with deep pockets. And so it sort of stuck, and I never really looked back. I've never practiced any other area of the law.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you found a good fit. You stuck with it. That makes a lot of sense to me. Now, one thing I know about attorneys is that they love yes or no questions. So I've got 30 yes or no questions submitted by listeners No, I'm just kidding. If you've ever, I'm going to go ahead and preempt Jessica on this by letting everybody know, if you come to an attorney and you say, should I do this? Yes or no? Get the hell out of there. Just go ask a friend. You're better off. So I do want to start by asking something that seems to come up in the news. It seems to come up. It comes up before people get married, because this is a divorce podcast, but you have to get married. So, in order to be divorced. So how valid in California is a prenuptial agreement? Are they worth a thing? Because there's all this conflicting information, like you should prenup, and then there's information like, well, the prenup didn't matter one bit. So where do those stand?
Yeah. So prenups are definitely, if they're done correctly, they can be enforceable. What is a little odd about prenups is that when we are considering whether or not they are unconscionable, meaning that whether they're so far beyond what should be fair that they're not going to be enforced, you look at the time that it's being enforced, not the time that it was drafted.
Oh.
And so that...
Give me an example.
Okay, so let's say, you have a young couple, they're entering into a prenuptial agreement and they want to waive spousal support, meaning they want to say, no, neither of us are ever going to seek spousal support. Mm-hmm. Then they sign the prenup. They do it properly. They follow all the timelines. They get it done correctly. And they have this provision that says that neither of them will ever be able to get spousal support. Then we get, 20 years down the road, and now someone has filed a dissolution, and, wife during the marriage earned, $5 million a year, and her career really took off, and she's had a lot of great success. And let's say husband maybe got diagnosed with a medical condition, and he's not ever going to be able to earn more than $80,000 a year. Mm-hmm. We don't look at what the circumstances
These young,
were.
healthy people signing a contract.
Correct. We're looking at whether or not enforcing that agreement would be unconscionable now.
Okay.
And so waivers of spousal support in a prenup are probably the thing that gets thrown out the most. Mm-hmm. Because I don't really know that you can't predict where everybody is going to be in 20 years.
Right.
That being said, I think that in a lot of cases, having a prenup provides a lot of peace of mind. Huh. It can protect your separate property. It can protect. I
just want to hang a lantern, put a spotlight on the word can.
Yes.
It can provide
Correct.
some security. It can, but that doesn't mean it does.
No.
Right? And so all of this is qualified, right? This is up to what comes up later in court, mm-hmm. or what circumstances change between the parties.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's really strict requirements mm-hmm. for how to make a prenup even valid to begin with.
Yeah.
And so you have to, make sure that the agreement is signed. The final draft of the agreement has to be given to the non-drafting party no less than 7 days before the wedding. So
that makes a lot of sense. I don't think there's anything unreasonable there. That tracks.
There is not, but you would be shocked.
People are like, day of, better sign this.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Day of, or
so people trying to hold a gun to the other person's head. And
night of the rehearsal dinner seems to be the common theme. I was given this after the rehearsal dinner. And so at that point, if you have 150 guests in town, what are you going to do?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, the answer is nothing, because you don't have to.
Correct.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, though, feel pressured. They feel a lot of pressure to sign that agreement because now the wedding is set and the other party is saying.
How many times has that come up where somebody comes to you and goes, I got dropped a prenup, the 2 days, the family's in town, the deposit's gone on the venue, and then you have to be cool. You can't say you should not get married to this person, right? But is that
right.
what's screaming in your mind?
No, I've never had it where they've come to me the night of the wedding or the day of the wedding. I've had it where they come to me 5 years later and say, I signed this and I was handed it the night of the rehearsal dinner.
And I didn't know that this was unenforceable.
Correct. So, there are definitely very strict rules about how you draft a prenup, how it's signed, when it's given to the other party.
Do you think I'm going to interrupt you because this is fresh on my brain and chronologically, I'm trying to help you.
Mm-hmm.
This is me trying to help you right now. Do you wish that people who are getting married met with a lawyer beforehand, regardless of whether they're getting a prenup done?
Absolutely.
Really?
Because I think that a lot of times you don't even need if somebody is worried about, they're getting married later in life, they have a business that they've started prior to the marriage, you don't necessarily need a prenup to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm,
There is, if you could sit down with a family law attorney for an hour and understand the difference between community property and separate property and how to keep your separate property separate, you can avoid a lot of stress down the road,
right?
Whether you have a prenup or not.
Yeah. Now, do you think, okay, one step further, do you think that the couple should come in together to see an attorney, or do you think the people who are getting married might just want to go pay for a consult on their own?
I would lean towards paying for a consult on your own for a couple of reasons. One, if you come in jointly, there's a conflict. You're not going to necessarily get unabashed advice about what I think is best for you, because when I'm talking to my clients, I'm talking to them in what's in their best interest. And so I think that if you're
not there to be a couples counselor, you are there to give a single person legal advice. Yes. You do not have clients that are a couple. You represent individuals.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's good.
And there's some other, like, if you are going to include any kind of change to spousal support, the other side has to have an attorney. If they don't have an attorney, that spousal support provision will not be enforceable.
And that's like the most common thing that people are going to put in a prenup is that?
I would say it's the spousal support, but a lot of times it's people are worried about inheritance. So maybe they stand to inherit something, a business or properties.
But that doesn't fall into community property.
That's correct.
See, yes, I've done this before.
You have. And so, they're worried about that, or they're worried, like I said, you have people who are getting married later in life and they have a house and they have retirement accounts and they have, other assets that they want to keep separate and protect. And those things by default would be separate until you mix them up. And
Got it. So and people mix them up when they get married all the time.
All the time, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And so that's why that kind of goes back to where I think a lot of people, if they sat down with an attorney before they got married, whether they were having a prenup or not, they could get a better understanding of how you protect that separate property once you do get married.
Got it. Now, I want to be clear that this all only holds true somewhat. Again, this is not as we are talking to an attorney. This is not legal advice that you can go in front of a judge and say, I got this. You got to pay Jessica, okay? But this would only hold true in California for our listeners who might be in another state. Do things change state to state on prenups?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There is
Is ours weirder or less weird?
It's probably stricter.
Yeah.
There's this Uniform Premarital Agreement Act. And so that does standardize some of the things across the state if a state has adopted that Uniform Premarital Agreement Act. But no, divorce law, family law, that is something that is wildly different state to state. Sometimes I come across things that are even handled different county to county.
Yeah.
And so it just, it's a state law issue.
Okay. You mentioned when you got into being an attorney and being in the kind of law that you're in trial a lot, as much as the only people in trial more often are criminal defense.
So
right?
Kind of in family court, we have motions, which are shorter. They're usually 20 or 40 minutes, depending on the issue. And then if we need longer times, that's when we set either an evidentiary hearing or a trial. So I probably don't do as many trials as public defenders. I definitely don't. But I do a lot of motion practice. So I'm in court more often on shorter 20, 40, 20, 30, 40
Okay.
minute matters.
Huh. Okay. Got it. That makes sense. Now, what I wanted to ask is, there's so much of criminal law that seems pretty well ironed out, and the I don't know, what do you call them? The sentencing guidelines, damages and so on and so forth. Damages is civil though, right? If
Damages
you're talking
is
damages.
civil. Yep.
Well, in criminal law, your sentencing guidelines seem pretty well detailed, and the crimes, they're all written right there. What applies to this? Is it a moving target every time you go to family law court?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think it's a moving target every time you go. I think that family law is unique in a lot of ways, but one of the ways it's kind of more unique than others is I think that everybody's family dynamic is different. And so there are guidelines. There are, the court has rules. There's case law. There's things that the court follows. But the unique thing about family law is that what works for one kid or what works for one family is not going to work for another family. And so it's really hard to say, like, to have a uniform parenting plan. That's,
right.
That doesn't make sense because everybody has different needs. But I think, too, a lot of times, and my clients don't really like to hear this, it depends on your judge.
Thank you. That's kind of what I was getting at, and I knew you'd get there.
Yeah. There's most of the people that become judges don't start out in family law. They have different aspirations. They are,
they're like, I want to be Meryl Streep, and oops, you do porn. I'm gonna do con law, but oops,
yeah.
I am a family law judge,
Yeah.
and I'm not loving the way things broke for me in life.
And so it's a really interesting. It's just interesting. It's because also you're dealing with real people. I mean, the judges on the bench, yes, they're judges, but they're real people. So they have their own personal experiences. They have their own bias, whether it's right or
values.
it's wrong. They have their own values. They have their own ideas of what things should look like. And so it does sometimes depend on who your judge is. And
so when that's kind of, I think, what I was trying to get at when I say, like, is it a moving target, is it seems to be so much, but at the same time more or less so than criminal defense. What do you think?
I think yes. I think that too.
More so in your case, it's more variable.
Yes, I think
defense?
there's a lot of variables that can come into play, and also what's interesting about family law is it touches so many different areas of the law, and so you don't just have to know family law. You kind of have to know a little bit about a lot of stuff. You have to know a little bit about criminal law. You have to know a little bit about tax law. In my practice, I don't give tax advice. That is like spelled out in my retainer agreement.
Right.
I don't give tax advice because tax is one of those things that changes all the time. But so when you get a judge that's new to the bench or they're new to family law, it's a big learning curve. And what a lot of judges, they do their 3-year term in family law and they're done. They don't want to stay.
Family, I had a guest, our last guest, he's pro se, and I recoiled immediately. I'm like, is your ex-wife pro se? And he's like, yeah, we're both pro se. And I'm like, how's that going? Because I have been to the family law courthouse a couple times, mostly to drop off paperwork, but only once in a hearing, and it is a shit show. It is a comedy and a drama and cringe. It's just hooliganism just everywhere, and everybody's losing their minds, and sometimes they're very dumb and losing their minds, and it's all just like, why wouldn't you hire somebody to help you in this process? And to have a judge, to be a judge that has to be there for 3 years. I get it. I get why you'd want to get the fuck out. And that's why it's so surprising that you're like, this is for me, baby. This is my life's calling.
And that's, I think, too, one of the unique things about family court is you're dealing with a lot more people who don't have attorneys. If you're in criminal court, if you can't afford an attorney, you're going to have a public
You're going to
defender.
have one, yeah.
So in family court,
That's a good point.
you're not entitled to that. And so you do have a lot more people who are doing it on their own. But also, this is a highly charged area of the law. And one time, I don't even remember when this was. It was when I first started. A judge was sitting on a panel at one of our, continuing education events, and he made a really good point, and he said, criminal judges are seeing some of the worst people on their best day. Family law judges see the best people on their worst day. Mm-hmm. And that's really true. Going through a divorce where you are losing time with your kids and you're losing your house and losing maybe half of your retirement and losing your spouse is really, really traumatic, and it's highly charged. And so that is also one of the things that I think just makes this area of the law unique is the level of emotions that run through it every day.
Yeah. So now me and my ex-wife, we did mediation. Now, do you, when people come in and speak to you, is that, is there an order of like, well, you should try and do this, plan B, plan C, D kind of thing? And can you walk us through what that might look like?
I think so. Yeah. It's
a decision
different.
tree? It's
probably different for every case.
Mm-hmm.
I think if parties are in a place where it's safe to engage in settlement discussions, meaning there's no lingering domestic violence issues, things like that, I approach all of my cases from a let's see how we can settle this mindset. I think that in the long run, mediation or settlement, whether it's informal 4-way settlement conferences or letters between counsel, it's quicker. Mm-hmm. It's a lot cheaper. And it gives the parties a little bit more control over what happens. The second that you step foot in that courtroom,
now
it is out of your hands. The judge gets to decide. Yeah. And so when we're talking about things like custody, the parties know their kids better than me, better than the judge on the bench. And so if we can get to a place where we are hammering out an agreement that is going to make everybody happy or equally unhappy, I start there. Obviously, sometimes you learn very quickly that is not the route to take. And there are instances where maybe settlement mediation are the goal, but you kind of have to start, you got to kind of get a hearing date on the calendar to sort of get everyone's feet put to the fire. And so,
right, so that people start actually meaning to move forward with the process.
Correct. And, a lot of times, and this is something that kind of, it changed when COVID happened and the courts, everything went to virtual, and it's sort of becoming, it's happening more and more as we get farther and farther from COVID. Things settle in the hall.
Right. They're like, I don't want to go in there. I don't want to talk to that man.
It's like at that point in time, people's feet are to the fire. They're standing outside the courtroom. And so I think a lot gets done in the hall. I think it's great when attorneys can be civil and you can get an agreement done in the hall. But there are definitely those cases where the parties are never going to settle. And you gotta slog through the court systems.
So this is something, when I talk to people that are looking at a divorce, they've either been served or they're serving, there does seem to be, right at that moment before anybody's really hashed out what the other party's needs are, what the other party's entitled to, before any of that is really ironed out, there seems to be a very clear, this person wins, this person loses. In their mind. Right? And then the second that they go and meet with an attorney, there's this awakening of, oh, I'm not as bad off as I thought I was. Oh, not everything is going to go my way just because X, Y, and Z, happen to be going. You're nodding your head. So yeah, you got a story? What do you got?
I get a lot of potential clients, and even sometimes my people that are already clients who call me, or they come into the office and they say, well, my friend gets this, so this is how much I should get. And, talking to your friends is great. Obviously, having a support system throughout the divorce
You
process.
heard it here. Jessica said, do not have friends. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I just think that, people hear what they know, somebody that's gone through a divorce. Their sister has gone through a divorce, and this is what happened. And there's so much that goes into it behind the scenes that it's hard. That's a hard blow to deliver sometimes when I tell them, I understand that's what happened to your sister, but you are nowhere near that path.
And usually, I don't know. It's tough to say there's winners and losers when it seems like everybody's kind of losing. Like divorce is just, it's war. It is a battle of attrition. There's not like a big like huzzah on either side. It's a judge and the attorneys trying to kind of limit the damages and determine what's fair. And it's so ugly. But overall, the people that come in with the gloomiest outlooks are more likely to come out, I think, feeling better, because it's bad for everyone. There's not one person that's going to just make off like a bandit in family law court.
No, and I think, that's I get asked a lot, what's your percentage of wins? And that's a really hard question, because no one's winning, right?
The judge doesn't say, like, by the way, 2 points Jessica, negative 2 points the other opposing counsel.
And so what to me, when I get asked that, what I think is a win is, like, if I come out of a hearing and what happened is what I thought was going to happen.
Right. That's a win.
That's a win to me. Because, but I also know that a lot of people are, they're so hesitant to get divorced because they don't want to break up their family, or if they're a spouse that hasn't worked in a lot of years, they don't know how they're going to do it if they have to go back to work. And I think that more often than not, I my clients, there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint in any sense of the word. And I get clients that come back, years later, thanking me for their life now, because their life now is what they envisioned. Right. And so while you're, going through hell the hell that is a divorce, it takes a couple of years for the dust to settle and for people to really, I think, be comfortable with the fact that divorce was the right choice for them.
Yeah. No, it's there's everybody we talk to, including myself, it's guilt, it's shame, it's pain, it's anger, it's all these nasty things that you're now feeling all at once and may have been suppressing, not dealing with, and just all this stuff just comes bubbling to the surface. It's really ugly. With that in mind, you deal with that every day, and you're happily married. How do you keep sane, looking at how awful marriages can go? And you and your hubs, you guys are jamming, you're chilling. So how do you keep a happy, positive outlook on your marriage and keep things good when you do this all the fucking time?
Yeah, that's a kind of a hard question. I think that there is this is a little personal, but my entire family is divorced and remarried, and then in some cases divorced again. And I see how much better off a lot of them are after they've been divorced than they were before. And so that's always kind of nice to keep in the back of my mind, because you have to do what makes you happy. And so for me, I probably have more communication with my husband than he likes sometimes.
But you see what happens.
Because I do see what happens if you don't maintain that level of communication. And I think that, we have been fortunate that we have grown on the same path, because I think that also happens a lot. People get married earlier in life, and they're on, 10 years later, they're on a completely different path.
They're different people. Yeah.
They're different people. And so I'm fortunate that we have grown on that same rate. But also I will say that probably as I've gotten farther and farther into my practice, I've gotten better and better at kind of compartmentalizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, keeping work at work.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I do have a little bit of a commute every day, and it's honestly not the worst thing in the world.
Sure.
It gives me a little time in between.
To go brain dead after, yeah.
It gives me, and so it allows me to sort of come out of the work mode before I pick up my kids at school and go home and start, the evening mode.
Gives an attorney time to put on a relaxing podcast about divorce and really just get rid of the day, wash it all away. That's great, and I don't know how you do it. That's shocking. I do have some broad questions that I think it shouldn't. I think you're going to like them.
Okay.
All right. What's one thing, or maybe a couple things, that you think people should do before they get married?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a few on this one. You should definitely verify that the other party is not thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in debt.
Woo! Do a credit check on your partner.
I also think, and this seems to come up a lot, if you plan to have children, maybe have that discussion before you get married. Your idea of parenting, how you want to raise your kids, the level of familial involvement from grandparents and siblings, that tends to rear its ugly head when the dissolution paperwork is filed.
Yeah, that was weird. I don't know why. Me and my ex-wife, she wanted to raise them Christian, and I was like, Zoroastrian. Why would we not raise them Zoroastrian? It's a very big problem at the divorce. I'm just kidding, but anyway.
But no, I mean it's
yeah,
kind of
it's
true.
That kind of stuff,
and I think too, before you get married, I would have an honest discussion about finances.
Yeah. Okay.
Who's gonna pay the bills? I get a lot of clients that they are maybe not the spouse that works. They stay at home. They kind of take care of the kids. They do the household stuff, and it's not uncommon for them not to have any idea where their money is.
Oh man.
And so I would, maybe have a discussion about the fact that you both kind of need to be in the loop on that.
I've heard of people that are like, I have no idea how much money we made. He would just give me an allowance. She would just give me an allowance. You're nodding.
It's super common. And those are, a lot of times those end up being my clients who struggle with what it's going to look like after they go
divorced.
through the divorce because
they have no idea what the
know.
Financial picture is.
And
they don't know
that's
what they're
scary.
entitled to because they don't know what the financial picture is. So they can't even make an estimate.
Correct.
It doesn't matter. They don't know the law. They don't know their own fucking situation before it gets to the law.
Yeah. And so that's I see that a lot.
Okay. That's very good.
Yeah.
What's one thing you wish people would stop doing when they are heading towards divorce, pursuing divorce?
Talking to their kids.
About the divorce?
Yep.
Oh. Okay.
I mean, obviously, this changes based on how old your kids are. Like, if your kids are 14, you're going to have to give them a little more of an in-depth explanation as to what's going on. But, I have clients in the past who they're exchanging text messages about who's going to have the kids, and they're arguing, and the kids are on the text.
Oh.
That's not good. And one thing that that comes up a lot is when kids either get interviewed by family court services or they're talking to their counselors, whatever's going on, kids hear and know more about what is going on than parents ever know. And so if you are not talking to your child about how horrible the other parent is, but you have your best friend over and you're standing in the kitchen having a drink, or you think your kids aren't listening, they're listening.
They heard it. Yeah.
And so that just is, that's hard for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I think the farther away your kids can be from the situation, the better.
Okay. Yeah. What's one thing people ambling towards divorce now? They're married and they're like they're looking at divorce. What do you think they should do?
Yeah. They should, if they get a list of accounts, retirement accounts, bank accounts, if
their own or just like
everything. And so I have a lot of times, I've told clients in the past, if you see a statement come in the mail, take a picture of it.
Huh.
Because then at least we know that account exists.
Right. And money,
so,
if it disappears.
Yep. And
gets
if
turned
it
into
doesn't
crypto.
get disclosed,
Right.
we know it exists, so we know who to send a subpoena to. And so that's a big one. The other one is if there is a likelihood that custody will be an issue, keep a calendar of when you have the kids, when you're picking the kids up, what time you're spending with the kids, because a lot of times you get one parent saying, I do everything, and the other parent does nothing. And if you've kept a calendar for 4 months, you're going to have a lot easier of a time proving it. And so, list of accounts, keep a calendar, keep running notes in your phone of just things that happen. If this is more also geared towards custody, but, if you're concerned about things,
about certain behaviors,
certain comments, certain instances, just jot it down in your phone, because then it's easier to remember when you get to my office.
Yeah. One thing that I'm going to chime in. One thing I wish people would do if they're staring down the barrel of a divorce: don't listen when your partner says we don't need to involve attorneys.
That's a good one.
Don't assume that they are being honest with you. Every single human I've talked to about divorce where the partner has said we don't need to involve attorneys inevitably serves the other person first. So that, in your mind, listener, should just register to you: they have already consulted their attorney. You are getting served. You are on your heels. Go talk to an attorney soon. After you hear that statement, get your ass to an attorney. They don't need to know that you talk to an attorney, but they have been definitely meeting with an attorney. You can bet your ass. I have yet to see a situation where that's not true. Anyway.
And the same thing goes to if you and your ex are going to engage in mediation, because it's very common.
Right.
Hire your own attorney to review the agreement before you sign it, and to have them consult with you throughout the mediation. The other party doesn't ever have to know that attorney exists, but at least you're getting legal advice, because mediation is wonderful. I think mediation is great, but a mediator is not going to give you advice. Yeah. They don't represent either of you.
Yeah, that's something that's very handy. As I said, me and my ex, we went to mediation, but there are things that you need to understand. You're choosing this level of custody. You're choosing this level of support. You're choosing these terms on divvying up finances, and that affects you now the way that you think it will affect you. But the impact, the way it can sway a judge down the road, is you didn't see your kids, but you didn't have your kids, but every summer. And now you're saying that you are entitled to more time with them. So what makes you think that you need more than 2.5 months out of the year with them? That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, from a financial standpoint, you want to know what you're giving up. And a lot of times with my clients, when we're in settlement discussions.
And if it's reasonable.
There's a cost-benefit analysis.
Right.
Maybe you could get $20,000 more, but you're going to probably spend it to get that. And the emotional toll is different for everybody. And when
you say spend it to get that, you mean in court?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the emotional toll is different for everybody too. I have some clients who being locked into litigation adds some stress to their life, but doesn't destroy them. I have other clients who are absolutely destroyed by the thought of going to court, by litigation hanging over their head. And so they're probably willing to give up a little bit more to avoid going to court. And so it's definitely a client by client analysis, but there's always a cost benefit discussion to be had, I think. And that's just something that I do as part of my practice.
Yeah. Yeah. After divorce, is there anything that you think that you would like people to do or not do? So I've asked you about the would, should, shouldn't. I feel like after divorce, it's murky because the divorce is never really over, but you should always kind of, I don't know, it can always rear its ugly head.
It can, especially if there are kids if there are kids and support orders. Those two things are always modifiable for a change in circumstances. And so, even after you have a judgment, if you have a judgment when your kids are 3 and 5, those orders might not make sense when they're 12.
Yeah.
And so, there's nothing, I wouldn't say there's anything that you should do, but if things start to become an issue, that's when you want to go back to taking notes, paying attention to
Keeping
what's
a
going
calendar.
on, keeping a calendar.
Mm-hmm.
In most cases, if there are support orders, you can ask for the other party's income once per year under the family code. You can ask for an income and expense declaration, which is a form that gets filled out with pay stubs, and if you're self-employed, Schedule C, or a profit and loss.
I love interrupting you. Number one. Number two, I love the acronyms that they use for the forms in family law court. You got the IED, which is doubles as improvised explosive device.
Yes.
And you have the SAD.
Yeah.
The schedule of assets and debts.
It's totally true.
It's incredible. Like, they did this on purpose, right? They just knew that this sucks, so we're going to give them sucky acronyms.
I'm sure they did. I mean, the legislature that came up with those form numbers, I'm sure that's what they
needed a laugh.
Yes, they probably did.
Sorry, I love interrupting you.
No,
it's the best.
But no, I think if financial issues are at it, like if you're paying support or you're receiving support, and you think the other party won the lottery, you have a right to ask for more child support if the other party won the lottery. So
you see that Range Rover pull up suddenly one day, gleaming.
Mm-hmm. It's true. I mean, I and people kind of forget about that once they get farther and farther away from their divorce.
Yeah.
And it's happened before where my client's like, I don't know why the other side filed. And I'm like, well, you bought a $3 million house. That might have something to do with it.
Okay, that feels pointed. But anyway, my house is not $3 million, but it is a house. Anyway.
But, so it does happen. And the thing just know that you have that option. If you have questions about what the other party is earning and there is support orders in your judgment, you do have the option to ask for their income once per year.
Once a year. Oh man. Okay. This comes up on the pod a lot, as you might expect. We get a lot of conversations surrounding infidelity, and there's a lot of emotions around infidelity, obviously, on everybody's part. In California, correct me if I'm wrong, makes no difference in a divorce. It doesn't come up before the court. Judge does not care. Does it seem to affect anything ever? Like, I mean, other than emotionally for the parties, does it ever seem to have an effect on outcome or anything in California?
Not that I know, not really. I guess if the infidelity or I guess in two ways. One is if the infidelity was putting the kids in danger by some way, meaning they were exposed to dangerous situations or inappropriate situations, that might come up a little bit. But the other way it might come up is if you have a party who has spent, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of community money on an affair.
Like Donald Sterling, the LA Clippers owner.
Yes.
I just watched that show.
That might be reimbursable, meaning that the party who was spending the money would have to reimburse the community.
Okay, so the person spending money might have to reimburse the community. Is it revocable? Like, are you able to get it from the person it was spent on?
Oh, no. That person wouldn't have any standing in family court. The family court can't do anything about that.
Okay. That money's just gone. Okay, so the person who spent it has to spend double.
Correct. They will, have to figure out either through division of assets or something, a way to make the other party whole. Got
it. And do you know if there's any other states, where that maybe don't have no fault divorce, where like it's going to really crush you? I don't even know which states have it. Like, I've got friends that are in Tennessee, North Carolina that have gone through divorces and stuff, and I know it's probably different there.
Yeah, I don't really know too much about.
I don't blame you.
The other states. I do know that Mississippi is a fault state.
Oh.
So at least it was.
So somebody's to blame.
Yes, at least it was when I dealt with an issue on it a couple of years ago. It may have changed, but wow. I did have a case that involved some Mississippi stuff. And it's totally different because you read the pleadings and they're,
Oh, everybody can get heated and go into every detail.
Blame, like there's like abandonment of the marital bed, like really
antiquated.
Yeah, very antiquated and very different because from the outset you're pursuing fault.
Right.
So you're trying to get more because somebody made a bad decision, I guess.
Yeah, so is it almost like a criminal court in that situation?
I don't know. I never have been to court. I've never done anything. I just know that I read the pleadings.
But what if we just speculate and like make up a bunch of stuff that our listeners cannot use?
Yeah.
Just like make up shit about Mississippi's courts. Is that a good podcast?
Probably not.
Somebody help me. Jessica, we're doing great. Is there anything that you would like to share that we might not have covered? And also, I would love for you to give a plug for yourself and your firm.
Awesome.
But yeah, anything that you wanted to get out there for our listeners.
I think that there's a lot of divorce even now is still kind of taboo. There's a lot of feelings around it, whether it's right, whether it's wrong. And what I will tell you is that I think each person needs to prioritize their self and their kids. And so there kind of tended to be this antiquated notion that it's good to stay together for the kids. And I sort of alluded to this before. Kids know so much more about what is going on than you think. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, maybe it creates some transition and some change. But if you are truly unhappy or you're in an unsafe situation or a very toxic situation, whether you have kids or not, talk to an attorney. I do a free 30-minute consultation. I know most of the family law attorneys in San Diego do a 30-minute consultation. And if it's something even that you're thinking about a little bit, talk to an attorney. Find out what the process looks like. Find out, what might be issues in your case. And a lot of times I talk to people and I don't hear from them for 6 months, a year, 2 years sometimes. But get yourself the knowledge base so that if you do decide to go down that path, you're not getting run over by the other party. I get this a lot too. Well, the other party said this. The other party's not a lawyer.
And they are definitely not representing your best interests.
So
they are going against you.
Don't let the other party spin you out so that you feel like you're entitled to nothing, because that's likely not the case. But no, definitely reach out to an attorney, get educated early on if you're contemplating it. Don't wait.
Mm-hmm. I do. Not only with the staying together for the kids situation, I also want to, I feel like I've said it before on here, but you're normalizing that behavior. You're normalizing that this is what a relationship looks like. Your kids are looking at this relationship every day. They will know no other relationship better than the one you and your partner model. So if you think staying together in an unhealthy relationship is good for the kids, understand you are just guaranteeing therapy, and or not that they shouldn't get therapy anyway, but unhealthy relationship seeking when those kids mature. I wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a counselor in any shape or form, but I agree with you. Mm-hmm. And that leads me into my next thing: get a therapist.
Yay! Yes.
This is one time when I first started practicing. Jane, who owns the firm I work at, she told a client in their initial consultation that, going through a divorce is equivalent to experiencing a death. Mm-hmm. You are losing your kids part of the time, probably. You're losing your spouse's family. Like I said earlier, your house, your retirement, your money, all of it. And so there's going to be, you probably are going to experience the same stages of grief mm-hmm. that you do when someone passes away. And so, a therapist is going to be life-changing. A counselor, a therapist, somebody to talk to.
Well, now hang on a second, because what my guests have suggested is that jumping into a new relationship immediately after is better than therapy. Is that not the case? Why are you laughing?
I mean, I can't speak to that from a professional standpoint. But, that does, sometimes it complicates things. It complicates things even more if there are kids in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at that, do what's best for your kids. Know your kids, what your kids can handle. Do what's best for your kids. At the end of the day, the court's driving motivations, my driving motivations when kids are involved are make decisions that are in the best interest of your kids.
Yeah.
Get orders that are in the best interest of your kids.
Yeah, the court's always going to look at the kids first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, but no, I definitely encourage all of my clients to have a counselor or a therapist because they're going to be cheaper than talking to me. First of all,
good point. And qualified in this particular area of mental health. Yeah.
And they can also help with how to talk to your kids about it and things like that. So it's a pretty, I think it's something that most people that are going to be going through a divorce should have in their back pocket.
I think you might not know this unless you've been a very avid listener of a podcast, but the intro and the outro, we very briefly do a disclaimer that nothing is medical or legal advice. Lawyer up and get therapy. So you're going to hear it for a third time on this podcast. Lawyer up and get therapy. Jessica, hit us with the plug.
Great. So I work at JWB Family Law. We are based in downtown San Diego, but we also practice in Riverside and Imperial County.
Lucky you get to just see the world, don't you?
See the world. Our website is jwbfamilylaw.com. We are only family law. We don't have any attorneys in the firm that do anything other than family law. And so that's all we do all day, every day. We work pretty collaboratively. I tell most of my clients, if you hire us, you're not just getting my brain, you're getting the brain of every other attorney that works at the firm. How
long has the partner Jane been practicing family law?
20. I think she's at 20 years.
Yeah,
20 years.
There you go.
She's a certified family law specialist. We have another senior associate. He has a MBA.
Mm-hmm.
He's been practicing 8 years. So we've got a lot of years of experience between us. And Jane's never done anything other than family law, so that's all we do. Like I said, we do a 30-minute consultation. So if you can book online, or you can't book online, but you can fill out a request online.
Yeah.
Or you can call our office and we will get you set up with a consult.
And definitely do that if you think you are coming up on a divorce. That website again, jwbfamilylaw.com. JWB, Jane Wesley Brooks is the partner.
Yes.
jwbfamilylaw.com. Jessica, thank you so much. This has been a real delight. I think you've given some incredible insight that will be valuable to listeners, and past and future guests, probably, if they get a chance to listen to this episode. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Once again, I am Will, and this is Jessica, and this has been What's Leaving and What's Left. Have a good day. What's Leaving and What's Left is written, produced, and hosted by William. Nothing the host or guests say should be construed as legal or psychiatric advice, so please, lawyer up and get therapy. Thank you so much for listening. Please continue to listen, like, subscribe, and share with a friend you believe may benefit from this story.